Hello and welcome to the Oxbow Tote Sew Along. I'm Anna. I'm happy you're here. I'm excited to get started. This is part one of the sew along. Today I'm going to go over the features of the tote, and then we'll discuss materials, supplies, interfacing, all that good stuff. We'll probably get to cutting and doing a few of the first initial steps. So I hope you'll stick along and have fun too. Okay, so the Oxbow is a pretty roomy sized tote, and there are two sizes to sew. This is the regular size and this is the overnight size. The only real difference is the overnight size is just a few inches taller, a few inches wider, and a few inches deeper. So just make sure to look at the measurements of the finished totes so that you can determine which one is going to work best for you. So I'm just going to show you on the regular size here some of the features. It's just got the main zippered closure, a nice roomy front pocket. There's a reinforced base. This one is just plain. I did wax canvas for this reinforced base. And we'll talk about more options as I go through some of the samples here. This is a Fabulism fabric. It's a woven fabric. It's pretty lightweight. I quilted this to 2 layers of batting, so quilt batting. So each of the main panels, front and back, has 2 layers of batting that I quilted to the fabric. So that's what gives that the stability and gives it a nice quilting texture. So we'll be sure to go over quilting a little bit when we go through those steps. It has the nice short handles for carrying, just for grabbing on and hooking over your elbow. If you wanted to make it longer to fit over your shoulder, you could just add a few inches to those handle measurements. Otherwise, there's the nice handy carrying strap, which you can wear crossbody across your, sorry, you can't see that very well, but across, or if you wanted to just shorten it, it's adjustable and you could just wear it over your one shoulder if that works best for you. So that's something to think about. The Oxbow is really great and also probably maybe intimidating if you're new to bag making, because there are a lot of options. There's a lot of fabrics that will work with this bag, and I think just knowing some of the basics and hopefully help kind of give you a feel for what you can use as we walk through the samples. So I'm gonna quickly go through the different samples I've made so far and just discuss kind of the different combinations of each. All right, so this is, like we talked about earlier, this is a lightweight. You could use a quilting cotton here for the main panel, and I quilted this to 2 layers of quilt batting. So 2 layers of cotton batting on each side of the bag. And then, so that gives it that nice quilted texture. It's fun, and it's a great place to use some of those favorite quilting cottons. So the other fabrics inside this one, I use waterproof canvas. This is a great option. You do not need to interface it. Waterproof canvas is available. It's kind of a specialty thing, I would say. I'm gonna link definitely some more shops in the description, but here's kind of what that looks like. It's kind of got a crispness to it. It is wipeable, which is really nice for a bag, for the inside. I know a lot of bag makers love this for their lining. Don't have to interface it. It's wipeable, pretty easy choice, I would think. Okay, so I got this particular waterproof canvas from Sullivans Trim. There's a lot out there. Just I'll try and link a few in the description, and yeah, you can also do some Google searching, and I'm sure a ton more will show up. So that is that sample. This is the overnight size. This is a waxed canvas for the main panel. This is essentially a quilting cotton weight for the front pocket, and then on the base I used a waxed canvas. And this one, if you can see, the top stitching. So this has a layer of Peltex. This is a very firm interfacing. I'd say it's like an 1/8 inch thick, and it's fusible on both sides. There's other brands that you can get, and you could even double up interfacings that you already have to make a nice firm base. So if you don't have this exact one or something like it, you can definitely work with it. So this has, yeah, the wax canvas base, and then for the interior, I have, this is like a mid-weight canvas. So a lot of the designer canvases come in a mid-weight. You could probably get away with not having any interfacing on those lining pieces. Definitely wouldn't hurt if you wanted to add the fusible woven interfacing, like I recommend. This is my personal tote that I made for myself. I purchased a pre-quilted fabric. This is from Blackbird Fabrics. This is like a fashion fabric. It doesn't have a lot of body to it, so it's fairly flexible. It's for like making coats, and but I think it's great for a bag. It's super lightweight. It's got some padding to it because of the quilting, and I just love it. It was super easy to put together, pretty easy to sew. I've got the plain wax canvas bottom, and then for the lining, again, another lightweight canvas. So that's what that looks like. This is the overnight size, and this is a cotton canvas. This is Bloom, the Bloom collection by Arounna, and that's for Kokka fabrics. I'll try and link that. This is Robert Kaufman Essex yarn dyed in army green. That's kind of a new color. It looks super great with this canvas. And here's the reinforced base with the quilting. That's with that Peltex in the bottom. And for the lining, this is one of my favorite linings. Personally, I like to use the Robert Kaufman Big Sur canvas. This is the, I think it's called Natural. It's just a nice creamy color. I tried out a different combination for this one. So I did the fusible fleece on the lining pieces, and I used a middleweight interfacing on the canvas, so on the outside. It did get a little thick at the corners here, where you get a lot of the seams butting up to each other, but overall I think it was gives it a really nice weight and is super sturdy. And this is a regular size Oxbow. This is a waxed canvas. This is Pendleton wool on the pocket, and it has I just used the same fabric wax canvas as the base. I don't think I didn't add any interfacing to this. You don't have to. It does help, especially with the overnight size, to stabilize that bottom, especially when you put heavier things in it. And then this is the Robert Kaufman Big Sur canvas, and this does not have any interfacing on it. So a wax canvas plus cotton canvas is a nice combo too. You don't have to use very much interfacing at all. So this is a good option if you want to steer clear of that. And this last sample, this is my daughter's. This again is using a pre-quilted like fashion fabric. This one is from Style Maker Fabrics. Again, I loved using this. It was really easy to use, especially when you have it quilted. It's one less step. And then this has a lightweight designer cotton canvas inside. I think this is actually a cotton linen blend. And this has the SF101 interfacing on the lining, and nothing, of course, on the pre-quilted. So that's the overnight size in another pre-quilted fabric. And the base is wax canvas with the top stitching. Okay, here is what that fashion pre-quilted fabric looks like. I'll show you the back. It's a single-sided, although the lining side is black, essentially, but that's just pre-quilted. There's batting in between. It's fairly lightweight. It's a little expensive per yard, but it does save you the steps of adding any batting and time quilting. So those are a couple things to think about. So that's that. Okay, so now we'll talk about some of the interfacing specifically, and I'll show you what I've got. I wasn't able to sew all the samples with all the different combinations. I mean, there's a ton of different variations that you can do, and I think they all work great. There's just a few things to think about as you're going along. Okay, so for the exterior of the bag, if you were using a cotton canvas, I would recommend a fusible fleece at the minimum. This is the Pellon Fusible Fleece 987F. So this fuses on, it adds a little bit of cushion. You could do a couple layers of that if you wanted. I would just probably keep the first layer, trim that smaller so that it doesn't include the seam allowance, and then layer the full piece over the top. So if you wanted to do the double layer, you could go that route. Another option is, this might be one of the easier ones, I would say. This is by Annie Soft and Stable. A lot of bag makers love this. It's a foam. It's really sturdy. When you have your final product, it quilts up perfectly. I like using it. It just depends on the bag that I'm making. But the Oxbow would be perfect in the Soft and Stable. You could use quilting cotton on this, something a little heavier. I probably wouldn't quilt canvas to the Soft and Stable though. That would probably be just a little too thick. You could definitely give it a try and see what your machine handles. And then lastly, and we talked about this when I showed you the samples, but I used just a 80-20, this is Quilter's Dream 80-20 quilt batting, so it is cotton and polyester blended together. I cut 2 layers for my sample that I used with like a lightweight fabric, and I quilted it and it turned out really well. I really liked it. It's super soft, but yet stands up on its own. So that is the batting option for your exterior. And then for the lining, of course you can use quilting cotton, and I would recommend adding the Pellon SF101. That's a fusible woven interfacing. There's other brands that have fusible woven interfacing, so pick whatever brand works for you, and that gets fused to the lining. You could go with a cotton canvas like I showed. This is the Big Sur cotton canvas. It's really sturdy already. You could add the SF101, the fusible woven, to this as well. I typically don't, but that's up to you. And then the other option is the waterproof canvas for the lining. And like we talked about before, this typically does not need any interfacing. It stands well on its own and is wipeable. So that is for the lining options. And then I'll show this Peltex again. This is the heavyweight interfacing that goes on the reinforced base, the bottom of the bag. So this is about 1/8 of an inch thick. It's feasible on both sides. If you wanted to use something you already had, you could double up other interfacings to kind of give it that same structure. But this is basically like a nice firm base, and it sews up really nicely too. I think that's all for the interfacing options. There's probably more out there. If you have a favorite, go for it. There's lots of different batting types as well. So like this is 100% cotton batting. There's wool batting that would make it nice and puffy. So yeah, just do some experimenting, and I think that it's just fun to try new things. So that's that. And then next, I think we're going to go over the different supplies for the tote. All right, so I'm going to go over the supplies I'm using for the sample I'll be making in the sew along. I think I might do a waxed canvas version at the same time just to see if there's any different steps. But this is a quilting cotton. This is designed by Leah Duncan for Cloud9 Fabrics. This is a quilting cotton. I'm going to be quilting that to batting. So I'm gonna get my batting scraps, and I'm gonna probably do the 2 layers since I like how that feels per panel. And I'm going to use this spray basting for attaching the layers before I quilt. Because I'm gonna be quilting that, I'm going to be cutting the main panel pieces larger, just a few inches taller and wider than the pattern piece. So when I quilt it, after I'm done, I can trim it to the pattern piece size, okay? And that gives you really accurate results for that. Instead of cutting the specific size and then quilting, you can get wonky, and quilting typically shrinks the piece a little bit when you're quilting, depending on how dense you quilt the piece. So here's my accent fabric. This is a Robert Kaufman. I don't know, it's got a really amazing little texture to it. I think it's considered a flannel. That'll be my accent. And then my lining, I'm going to use the waterproof canvas. That's from Sullivans Trim. And so that's kind of the overview of the fabrics that I'm going to be using for this sample. And next we're going to talk about hardware. So you'll need 2 1-inch wide D-rings, 2 swivel snaps for the detachable strap. These are 1.5 inches wide, and then 1.5 inches wide strap slider. So those 5 pieces make up the hardware for the over-the-shoulder strap. The other thing is webbing, and there are a ton of different webbings now. This is my favorite that I have in my shop. It's a mostly cotton webbing. There's a little bit of polyester in some of the colors just for durability. This is 1.5 inches wide webbing, and you'll need 4 yards of that. Then we'll go over zippers. So you can use a fixed length zipper or a zipper by the yard. Both sizes are given in the pattern. Just keep in mind the different size totes use the different size zippers. So if you're using the fixed length, you want to make sure you're doing the longer size for the overnight. That's what that kind of looks like. And this is the shorter size. That's for the regular size Oxbow. And then if you're doing zipper by the yard, usually buy that in several yard chunks, but the sizes for what you need to cut the zipper tape to is listed in the pattern. And then you're gonna need 1 zipper pull, okay? Just 1. Just some of the marking tools. I love this little guy. It's a little 1.5 inch square ruler. I'm gonna link the Etsy shop where I got this from. This is perfect for this bag. There's a lot of markings that use this kind of measurement. I think it's super helpful to have a nice sturdy acrylic piece like this. If you wanted to, you could make your own little template out of cardstock or whatever plastic you have laying around. So definitely make one of those or pick one up if you are interested in something like that. And of course, you're gonna want some marking tools, pins, all that kind of good stuff. I usually like to use just a pencil for a lot of markings on the wrong side of the fabric or interfacing. And I always have my chalk pencil, mechanical chalk pencil that helps with marking on dark fabrics. Scissors and all that kind of good stuff, and your sewing machine. So yeah, I think that's all we need as far as supplies. For the Oxbow, you're going to have several pattern pieces that you're going to need to print out, either if you're using the PDF version of the pattern. Those will need to be printed out and pieced together before cutting your fabric. Those instructions are at the start of every size. So if you're doing the regular, you'll find the test box for printing, and then the little instructions on how to tape those together. Some of the pieces are rectangular. A lot of bag makers are familiar with that. So you could just cut directly on your fabric with your cutting mat and ruler, and cut those pieces directly to size, and those are listed in the pattern as well. So your preference, if you want to cut the rectangles just directly in your fabric, or if you need templates, then those are available as well. Yeah, so I think I'm just going to get started cutting, and we'll go from there.
So I have my pieces cut out. These are for the main exterior pieces. This is my quilting cotton. And then for each piece, I have 2 layers of quilt batting. So here's my other side, and then the 2 layers of batting. So these are each rough cut a few inches larger than this pattern piece. That's just to allow for shrinkage, and once you trim it to size after quilting, it'll give you a nice, accurate result. The thing to note about the pattern pieces is that there are markings on them. You're going to want to make sure to mark the centers and those markings that are indicated on each piece. Those are important. If you forget them, you can always come back and mark them after, when you get to the point where you realize that you forgot to mark them. I've done that like almost all the times, so don't worry, it can be done. For quilting, if you're new to quilting, I would definitely recommend, instead of just jumping right into your fabric with your batting, is to grab a smaller piece of fabric. It doesn't even have to be the same fabric, it could just be the same weight of fabric, and then some of the scrap batting pieces that you have, and make a little test swatch so that you know how your machine behaves and how it quilts, and kind of get a feel for that. This is my spray based, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over to an area that I don't mind if there's overspray. If you don't have a spot like that, you can lay out like a bed sheet, but it will get kind of a sticky residue on it. It's usually cleanable with soap and water. Just maybe look at the label on your basting spray before you go and do that. So what I would do is spray on the back of this fabric and lay it down. Actually, I spray on both sides, the fabric and the batting. Lay that down, smooth it out, and then proceed to this next layer. Spray here, you can spray on both sides, and then smooth it out, and it just makes a nice little sandwich. So once that's all sprayed together, you would make sure it's smooth, and then you are ready for quilting. There's a lot of different machines out there, but if your machine does not have a walking foot on it, you might find it helpful to purchase a separate walking foot. My machine, I have a Janome 1600P. It's a straight stitch machine. I don't use the walking foot with it. That's just because I'm familiar with how it quilts now. You might find this helpful. I know on my other machines in the past, this has been like a huge saver. It just grips the fabric from the top and the bottom so that you are getting nice even feed through your machine. Another thing we can talk about is marking your quilting lines. This is called a Arounna marker. It just puts a crease in the fabric. You would use your quilting ruler to make your design and just use this as just like you would a rotary cutter, but it just makes a crease in the fabric, and that crease you can see and use that as your guide for quilting. You can also use a water-soluble pen. Just test to make sure that it will wash off before marking your whole fabric. And then the other thing about quilting is that you want to set your stitch length to at least a 3. I would say you could even lengthen it out further if you needed to, but you want those nice, even, smooth stitches, and a longer stitch length is going to turn out better. But yeah, I think that's it. I'm gonna get mine basted and quilted, and then I'll come back and trim it using the pattern. All right, so now I have my piece spray basted to the batting. Just make sure that all of your layers are stuck together. Smooth out any wrinkles. There is some time to readjust the fabric if you need to, and then if you did miss a spot like I did, I'm gonna go back and just spray that little corner. But I have it on my cutting mat. I'm going to just use my quilting ruler and my Arounna marker. I'm gonna do a grid, maybe like a 2-inch spacing grid, both vertical and horizontal lines. I've done some with just vertical lines. You can do just horizontal. You could make any kind of other quilting design that you want. I'm gonna try and also link a video from, there's a ton of quilters that show this whole process very closely. It's a lot of detail, and I think they might have some really good videos that if you needed additional help with any other tips as far as quilting goes. I forgot to mention that you can pin baste. These are curved basting pins, and you would just put your layers together without any adhesive, and then you pin every so often. Usually you use like the size of your hand. That's how often you would pin. And then as you're quilting, you just have to remove the pins. But for bag making, I just prefer the spray based. It's quick and easy. The pieces aren't very big, so it's just my preferred method. But I'm gonna go ahead and mark this out.
Okay, so here is my piece quilted. One of the pieces, I'm gonna quilt what'll be the front and the back main panels. And when we trim them to size using the pattern piece, because it is a shape, if you do have a particularly thick combination of fabrics, you may want to trace off or print off another piece of the template to make one whole piece so that you would just cut it flat. It's just something to think about if your fabrics get super thick, and we just want to make sure that we're as accurate as possible. So yeah, if you have that, cut off another set of template and make one solid piece that you could just cut around. So that's just a little tip I have if you're working with that. One other thing to note is that if you are making a specific design, I would start at the center, both horizontally and vertically, so that you can get the pattern piece centered. So after you're done quilting, you can trim it without sacrificing like where your design might end up being, so that you can center it on this piece of quilted fabric.
Okay, so the first step is to prepare this reinforced base. And so I have got my heavyweight interfacing, and that is cut a 1/2 inch smaller on each of the long sides, so an inch total height difference than your accent piece. So this is my accent fabric that's cut from the reinforced base. And I'm just going to center it like this. This is my wrong side technically, even though it's hard to tell on this particular fabric, but I'm gonna place that wrong side down. I can fuse this in place. I'm gonna take it over to my iron and just press that because this particular interfacing is fusible. Okay, so I have that interfacing fused to the accent piece, and I'm going to take it over to the machine, and I'm just going to do some rows of top stitching. I just like the way it looks. You wouldn't have to. A lot of my samples, especially when I've used wax canvas, I just didn't top stitch over this piece. I think it adds a nice look, maybe adds a little bit of reinforcement to the fabric. So just an option for you. Okay, so the next step is to mark both the accent piece and the lining piece for the reinforced base. So you should have the lining piece cut out of the reinforced base as well as the accent here. And what we're gonna do is we need to mark a line. This is where we're gonna be sewing the base on later. You wouldn't necessarily have to mark this first piece since your interfacing is cut to that dimension, but we're gonna mark a line a 1/2 inch away from this raw edge on each side, this raw edge of the fabric, and we're stopping a 1/2 inch from each end. Okay, so this one I'm just gonna mark the dots of where I want to stop. And I know that this interfacing is about where it should be, and I'm just gonna have my needle traveling right along the edge of that interfacing when I'm sewing. So I'm just marking that dot on the wrong side of the fabric here. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And then I've got this is my waterproof canvas, so I don't have any interfacing on it, but I'm just gonna, I believe there's a right and wrong side. This wrong side is a little bit smoother in texture. It kind of feels like it has a little bit more of a coating on it. So I would just make sure that when you grab your other pieces that you're making sure that you have the right and wrong sides. So this lining piece, the reinforced base, we're just going to draw that line on the wrong side of the piece. And I'm just going to mark with a little dot where that should start and stop. And then same for this side. And I always just like to double check my measurements and make sure that I can see it while I'm sewing. Okay, so that's that marked out. So both of your reinforced base pieces are ready to go for the next step. Okay, so now I've sewn that box, if you can see the stitching there, just a little rectangle. Guide the webbing so it's flat. This is just so I don't get it twisted. And I'm just gonna slide on my swivel clasp onto one end, with that the clasp part facing down. And just keep threading it on. And then this raw edge here goes up and over that center bar of the slider. Okay, so then as that slides down, that's one end of your strap. Then you've got the adjustable slider. And then we're going to take this raw end here, and then we're going to thread on the swivel clasp, give it a little room here, and tuck that raw edge under, and then sew a rectangle again, just to keep that in place. So that's what that'll look like. I'm just going to go through one more time. All right, so I've got my strap slider attached, and I'm just going to feed this strap along so it's laying flat and not twisted. Thread on the one swivel clasp, slide it down. Then we're going to take the raw end of the webbing, go up and over the strap slider bar. So that's your one end. The other swivel snap goes threaded on to the raw end. Give it a little room here, and then tuck that raw end under. And then we're going to take it over and just sew a rectangle to keep that in place. All right, so this is what the strap looks like when it's finished. All the raw edges are enclosed, and you've got the adjustable part in the middle there, so you can set that aside. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be making are the strap holders, and you're going to want to grab your 1-inch D-rings. There's 2 of them. And I forgot to mention when I was talking about the different supplies, you can also use 1-inch wide webbing for these strap holders. So it's just about 5 inches that you would need. So if you have them left over for another project, that's a good shortcut to use webbing. Otherwise, if you wanted to make them out of fabric, these are just simple rectangles. These are I cut out of the accent fabric. You can cut them out of the exterior if there's enough left over, or any kind of scrap that you want. I'll show you one of each, and then we'll kind of go from there. I'd like to fuse some interfacing on the wrong side, and you're going to have it centered like that on the wrong side of the strap holder piece. So then the first step would be to fold it in half, matching those short edges. And then you open it back up, press the raw edges to that center, and then press them in half again. So that gives you your 1-inch width. And then I just top stitch along each edge here, and you could add more rows in between if you'd like. And then that gets threaded through the D-ring and folded in half. So what that looks like for the webbing is you just thread it on, fold it in half, and then you can just baste those raw edges together. So those are your strap holders with the D-rings. All right, so this is what the strap holders will look like. I chose to do them both from the webbing. You can do them from the fabric if you'd like. So you can just set those aside for now with the strap. And the next part is to prepare the zipper. So I've got a fixed length zipper here, and I've got some zipper by the yard, my zipper tape here, and one pull. And so I'm gonna show you, it's written in the instructions, and then I'm gonna show a little bit of a fancy way to do it with an end tab that's made of leather. I'll just get started here. You'll first want to thread your zipper pull onto your zipper tape if that's what you're using. Then you can cut it to length. Just make sure you're cutting the overnight size versus the regular size, depending on which size tote you are making. Okay, so I've got the zipper pull on, the zipper tape, so that's kind of what that looks like. Okay, so the first step I like to do is to finish the end of the zipper. So with the zipper tape, you just want to make sure that you've got this going in the right direction. So if I'm pulling it shut, the end tab should go on this end. So if it's all the way open, you've got the end tab to stop it from opening. I'm going to just show how to press that out of fabric, and then I'll jump over to this zipper and show how to do a leather end tab. All right, so I'm just gonna spray that with starch to get it nice and flat. This is my end tab out of the fabric. So first we are going to press each side to the wrong side by 1/2 inch. Okay, now that all those edges are pressed, then I'm going to fold it in half again, matching those short ends. So it'll almost be like a little square for the end tab. I like to just slip the raw ends in this open end here, and I'm going to butt that folded edge right up to the metal end stopper there. And depending on your zipper, you may need to adjust the end tab, like just fiddle around with it to get it to fit that width. Then you can pin it in place and then sew along each of these edges. If you're feeling kind of fancy and have like a little scrap of leather nearby, I've been doing these little zipper end tabs a little different just for fun, just to keep myself entertained basically. If you have a piece of leather, mine is about just under 1 inch wide by 1 3/4 inches tall. So when I fold it over, that's going to make the little end tab. And then what I like to do for the zipper to get it kind of a little bit narrower, and then it kind of also helps it lay super nice when the bag is finished. But I just tuck these raw ends toward each other, wrapping them like underneath the zipper. So this is my wrong side of my zipper. And then I just tack that in place with some stitches on my machine. So just make sure you have it kind of even looking, and then tack it in place right here next to that end. And then once that's done, you can take your leather scrap, sandwich it around your zipper, and then you would sew on the same way, except I don't sew over this folded edge because depending on the type of leather you have, it might get kind of bulky there. But I just start sewing along this edge, along the zipper, and then back up the other side. And I do just a couple back stitches. If you wanted to add a little glue here and in between to keep everything nice and stable, that's a good option too, but that's kind of what that would look like. All right, so that's kind of what that looks like. It'll just come with practice. It's fun, you know, to use scraps of leather like this, and I would just recommend a longer stitch length, and if you have a leather needle, to try to use that. But otherwise, just try it out and see how it goes. To finish off the zipper, we're gonna need to finish these ends. I like to do it now. There's other methods where you finish it while you're sewing, but I just find this easier for me. What you wanna do is mark a 1/2 inch from this raw edge of the zipper. So this is a good spot to use this little marking tool. And can't see it super well on that gray, but that is where I'm going to make sure to fold my zipper edge to. So what I do is kind of hold my finger behind this line, and I want to match that line up to the zipper teeth. So I'm just going to fold that underneath there, so it's kind of at a 90-degree bend like that. And I just put a little pin in here without poking myself. So that's what that'll look like. So I just push underneath at that marking, and I want to line it up to the teeth so that it's going to form that 90-degree bend in the zipper. That's going to give you a nice finished end, and it also prevents the zipper pull from sliding off. So that's what that'll look like, and then I'll just take it over and tack it down with my machine on both of these edges through all of those little folds. So that's what that looks like. And it's a similar process here with the fixed length zipper, but you're just going to want to make sure that you are looking at these end stops. These are the stops that prevent the pull from coming off on a fixed length zipper, and it's the same process. So I'm just going to use that end stop as my marking guide. Just fold it back and make a 90-degree angle. But we'll take those over, and I'm going to tack those both down. So that's what that 90-degree fold is going to look like. And the other method that I use that's maybe even a little simpler is to just bend this back on itself. And I just make sure I kind of go at a little bit of an angle here so that when the zipper is sewn in, that end is going to be caught in the seam as well. So that's just another method. Just make sure you have that pulled back nice and snug so that you have the zipper at the right length there. That's what that'll look like. They're effectively the same, I guess. So either method would work. Okay, and then I think we're gonna end after this little fun extra. I've been making zipper pulls like this lately a lot. Again, just to use up scraps. This is just a little different than the other leather pulls that you can just loop through and tie that I sell in my shop. Those are gonna be probably the most user-friendly, but this is a fun little option. All you need is about a 6-inch length piece that's just a little over a 1/2 inch wide. And that can kind of depend on the opening of your zipper pull. Some of them are going to be a little bit more difficult to thread through with that width, so you might have to slim it down to like a 3/8 of an inch. I am going to just fold it in half to kind of find that center mark. So that's going to leave kind of a little crease, just a visual for me of what I'm doing next. But I have this 1/2 inch diameter hole punch. And I've got my rotary punch that's going to cut the small hole for the rivet. I got a hammer, my little cutting mat, and the rivet. This is an 8mm head with a 6mm post. So that's my rivet for that. And then I'm just going to use my hole punch, and this is just going to notch out this center part of the pull. That's going to make that nice little indent for the zipper pull to sit. And I'm just going to thread that through the hole here, and make sure you just have a soft enough fabric that you can bend a little bit. As you can see, that's because of the width, it's going to need to bend in half. And sometimes you can get some like major like stretch marks like I kind of did there. I just usually typically kind of use my hand and see if I can get it to kind of work its way out without having to redo it. That's what that'll look like. And then I just hold that in place, and then I'm going to use my rotary tool, my rotary punch, and make a hole for the rivet. Okay, and then I put the rivet through, put the cap on the other side like that, and then I'll take it over to my press and press that in place. And then once I've done that, just to speed things up here a little bit, is I'm just going to trim with my rotary cutter a nice clean edge. So you can kind of do whatever angle or length you want, but that kind of gives you a little extra room. So yeah, again, I'm just going to take that over and press it, and that'll be my zipper pull. Okay, so I think that's a great place to finish for today for this part of the Oxbow tote. We've got our main panels quilted if we chose to do that. Everything should be cut out. We did our reinforced base pieces, got them interfaced and marked, and then we worked on making the strap. So you should have the finished crossbody strap, the strap holders with the D-rings, and then we worked on the zipper. So you should have your completed zipper, the end tab. I think we're at a really good spot. Yeah, it'll be fun to see them come together. Hope you're having fun. See you next time.